I was born the secure youth treatment facilities at Los Angeles County, and we contracted with the county to provide services for these youths.
Awesome. So what brought you into this?
Well, I was formerly incarcerated. I was 17 years old when I was incarcerated for first-degree murder. And I was tried, convicted, sentenced as an adult, even though I was a minor. And mind you, it was for an offense that I didn't commit. However, I was not as fortunate as some to prove my innocence. So I basically served out 32 years in prison for that offense. While I was incarcerated, I was introduced to ARC, and when they came into the adult prisons to facilitate self-help groups, I enrolled, and my first life coaches were from ARC. So when I went, and they were tremendous in helping me figure out some things about myself internally, so that I was able to articulate to the commissioners of the California Parole Board to eventually regain my release. And once I was released, ARC gave me a call and said, "Hey, are you interested in becoming a life coach for the Hope and Redemption team?" The Hope and Redemption team, also known as HEART, they facilitate in adult prisons. So that's where I started my career with ARC, entering the adult prisons. And then a year later, the Credible Messengers and the SYTF sort of like formed. And my boss said, we think you're a better fit to work with the youth because you were also a youth when you first came in. So here I am, and I've been a Credible Messenger now, going on a year.
Wow, that's amazing. So I would imagine that a lot has changed. You said you were in the system for 33 years? Okay, there you go. You just unfroze.
Okay.
So I would imagine that a lot changed while you were incarcerated. What was that like?
Well, coming home, one of the greatest challenges for me was technology.
Oh,
It was extremely stressful, and even to this day, I still struggle a little bit. But I've learned so much. I've come along a long way in learning bits and pieces of how to navigate a computer, a laptop, a cell phone. So now there are times when I'm actually assisting others in to navigate their laptops, So I feel good about that,
I so feel you on that, because I feel like technology, no matter how quickly I move, technology moves way more quickly than I'm keeping up with.
Yes. And I didn't have much of a challenge in adjusting to society. And I attribute that to the support network that I had, especially with my family. I come from a large family, and they were very supportive throughout my 32 years of incarceration, visiting me quite often, letters, telephone calls. I was always in communication with them. And so after I completed 6 months in a transition home upon being released from prison, I was able to reside with my sister, which I still do today. I've been there for 4 years already, living with my sister. And that was a tremendous amount of help. I know some people don't have those type of resources like I do, and I've seen them struggle. So I would, a support network. Yes, a support network for me, I consider it one of the most critical and essential things to have upon returning home to society. It makes it a lot more easier to adapt and adjust after being incarcerated for decades.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense, because it keeps you tied into a community. And
Yes,
there's so much to be said for having a community in anywhere that you are, but especially when you're going through such a big transition like that, having a community to come back in and to know that they are supporting you, because you're going to slip up. We're all human, and
yes,
and having that support network underneath you makes sense that would make a huge difference.
yes. And I would include ARC as part of my support network. They've been there for me since even before incarceration. And then when I finally returned home, they were there for me.
That's awesome. So what do you think, you've now seen this process from both the side of the person being incarcerated, but also from the side of helping young kids that don't have as much support behind them. What do you think are the keys to helping kids make better decisions?
Well, all we can do as credible messengers is go into youth facilities, share our stories, provide them with tools through our curriculum, tools that can help them to develop soft skills. I mean, like three of our curricula that we impart right now is emotional intelligence, anger management, financial literacy, and we've even started providing a little bit of conflict resolution.
Wow,
So
that's huge.
these were the classes that I took while I was inside with ARC, and they helped me a lot. They helped me to gain insight into my, even, as I mentioned at the beginning of the interview, I was innocent for the crime I was committed to prison for. However, I'm not innocent of a lot of crimes that I did commit that I got away with. So and I continue to commit crimes while I was inside prison too. But these classes that I just mentioned, they helped me to develop insight into that criminal mentality and behavior. They helped me to develop a sense of accountability, taking responsibility for that lifestyle that I was living, and they helped me to develop remorse and compassion, and then just as importantly, to be able to express that and articulate it, especially to the parole board, because a lot of people may develop that insight, accountability, and remorse, but if you can't articulate it to the commissioners, how are they going to be able to test your sincerity if you can't articulate it?
That makes so much sense. And I mean, those are skills that I wish we taught across the board to all kids, because they
Yes.
are such critical skills. And I can't think of anywhere that we learn those skills, but they are the skills that make or break how successful you are in life in general.
Yes.
Financial management seems like such a simple thing, but it's huge.
And the thing with the youth and the credible messengers, why credible messengers? Well, a lot of the youth and I mean, I lived that experience. I was in juvenile hall. I was incarcerated in juvenile hall. And I know when I was their age, we didn't respect, when I was their age and incarcerated in the youth facilities, I recall we didn't have much respect for authority figures.
Yeah.
Probation officers. And even though they try to counsel us and provide services to us, we just didn't have respect for them. We felt like you never experienced our lifestyle. You never walked in our shoes, right?
Yeah.
So here comes the credible messengers. Okay, we have walked in your shoes. And, we bring a message to them, and that's the messenger in the title, credible messenger. But the credibility, that's not on us, the credible messengers. That has to be earned that has to be earned by the youths. And we already have a leg up because we've walked in their shoes.
Yep.
And so they're willing to listen to us. A lot of them want to hear our stories. They want to hear how prison was, what we did in prison, you know, and that catches their attention. Once we get their attention, then we start working towards providing them with those tools and those soft skills so that they can be conducive to eventual pro-social behavior.
That makes a lot of sense, you know, and I mean, I won't lie. I'm fascinated by those shows on TV that show what prison life is like, because it is, as someone who's never been there, it's kind of hard to wrap your brain around, you know, and
Yeah, it is.
Like, I can't even imagine being 17 and landing in that environment. Like, I mean, how did you even get your feet underneath you when you landed there?
I had to go through some adjustment there. Yes, I had to go through a serious dose of adjustment when I went inside. I didn't know anybody inside because I wasn't part of an official gang. Even though I functioned like a gang member, I didn't belong to an official gang with a name. But for all intents and purposes, I behaved like a gang member. So, I mean, it was no difference. And so I didn't have friends inside there or homeboys or homies the way we used to talk at that age. And so the adjustment was a little bit difficult for me. I try to find a way to fit in. And so when I got involved with gangs on the inside, I didn't understand it at the time, but as an adult and doing serious reflection, I realized that I was overcompensating a lot, volunteering myself to commit violent acts to be accepted by the other youths, and because I had a serious need to belong.
Yeah.
And feel like I fit in.
Yeah. I mean, that makes total sense. I would imagine it was lonely. I mean, that sounds incredibly lonely to be in this completely different environment without a support network of a gang behind you and trying to figure out how to navigate the system, but also, you know, make friends with for lack of a better term, all these cliques, you know, trying to figure out how to break into one of the gangs or a clique. Wow.
And I realized quickly that the way to feel it was a successful way of feeling accepted was through violent acts, because I would commit violent acts. I would volunteer to commit violent acts, and as part of my, I noticed that when I would commit violent acts, it would garner praise from my peers, you know, and pats in the back, and it made me feel accepted, you know, and I was like, okay. But unfortunately, that had me expelled from the California Youth Authority and sent to adult prison only 8 months after I was placed in the California Youth Authority. So I ended up in prison at 19 years old, and not just any prison, but newly minted Pelican Bay State Prison up north in Crescent City, California, about 6 miles south of the Oregon border. It was considered, it was dubbed at the time the most violent prison, because that's where they were supposedly sending the worst of the worst in the state. And when I got there, the month that it opened, when I got there, getting off the bus, the warden was actually in the parking lot waiting for the bus to arrive to greet the new residents of Pelican Bay State Prison. And I remember to this day, this was 1989, and I still to this day remember these words from the warden. And he said, welcome to Pelican Bay State Prison. You are here because you have been deemed the worst of the worst. the irredeemable. I was 19 years old at the time, and to hear those words coming from the head of that institution, it's like, that was some welcoming, and it kind of cemented in me like, this is the end of the road for me. I don't even know why I'm here. I mean, this is my first time being incarcerated, and I'm in Pelican Bay State Prison, and the warden is calling me the worst of the worst. So it was telling me, this is where I'm going to die. I'm never coming home again. Hearing those words, I lost, if there was still any slither of hope left in me, I lost much of that. Just hearing those words and realizing where I was at now. And my case was still undergoing the appeal process. I was trying to hang on to a little bit of hope. And as I mentioned, that was 1989. By 1992, I was still there at Pelican Bay. And I lost my appeal. And so at that moment, I said, okay, it's over then. I'll be here I'm gonna die here. I rapidly went into decline, further entrenched in the gang culture there. And within a year of my arrival there, I was already placed in solitary confinement there in the SHU, the security housing unit. It was considered one of the harshest means of confinement, not only in the state, but in the nation, because you were in that cell for nearly 23 hours a day, no window, and most of the time you were single cell. You weren't allowed to have a cellmate. So that's I was placed in that for committing violent acts. I was there for 2 years. And eventually I was released to the general population. And because of my gang involvement, soon after my release to the general population, I believe it was 6 months after that, I was validated as a prison gang associate and sentenced to an indeterminate SHU term back into solitary confinement. I ended up serving 20 years in the SHU, the security housing unit there at Pelican Bay State Prison.
20 years?
20 years, yes.
I can't even imagine what that does to you, inside, to be segregated for that long.
Well, I know what it did for a lot of people. I saw friends of mine, peers, that over the years there rapidly mentally deteriorated to the point where they began hallucinating, talking to themselves, had like a schizophrenic type of symptoms. There was a federal lawsuit early on from when it first opened, and it culminated in 1995. And the federal judge found that conditions there in Pelican Bay State Prison's security housing unit, quote, press the boundaries of what most humans can psychologically tolerate, end quote. Those were his findings. Yet, the judge determined that not enough time had passed for him to make a determination for everyone that was so confined in Pelican Bay State Prison. But he did find that for individuals that were either already exhibiting mental challenges or mental problems, and for individuals that were susceptible to developing mental problems, were no longer going to be permitted to be housed there. So the judge banned housing those types of individuals there, but for everyone else, the judge said that there wasn't enough time to assess whether it's harmful to continue housing people long-term in the SHU. So a lot of us spent decades in there until 2015, when a second federal lawsuit in conjunction with mass demonstrations in the form of hunger strikes were initiated by the class action. And this time the state, is my understanding that the state feared that there had been enough time now to pull up data showing that a lot of guys did suffer mentally, that didn't benefit off of the first class action, but now did suffer mental harm being confined there for decades. And so the state wanted to settle rather than take it to trial. And in that settlement, we were able to give release back to the general population.
Wow. And I would imagine that would have been another tough transition to go from that much quiet and alone time and separation back into the, I mean, I'm just totally guessing, but was it overwhelming?
You're correct. A lot of us came out because in the SHU, we were always cuffed. Like a lot of times when we're exiting the cell, we're handcuffed. And the general population, they don't handcuff you when you're when your cell door is opening, they don't handcuff you. So just out of habit, for some of us that did so much time in the SHU, when we were back on the general population and our cell door was going to be open, we would motion our hands behind our back to put through the trap in the door to get handcuffed. And some of the guards would tell us like, no, we don't do that here. We don't do that. But we knew that, but out of habit, Yeah.
So what was probably the hardest part coming out of the SHU? Like what was?
Just being I think it developed it made for the possibility of feeling a little bit paranoid, because all those years in the cell is like you feel safe, you feel secure, right? And now you're out on the general population and people are walking beside you, behind you. And so there was like a heightened sense of alertness. And because you're free now in the general population, as free as you can be, and people are walking, you can touch people, you can shake people's hands, you can give your peers a hug, you can play basketball, all these activities, that involves other people. So for many of us, it took some adjusting to do.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, just
people ask me, what is the first thing that you did when you were released from the SHU and placed on the general population? Well, when I got to my cell at night, I had a window. I could see outside. It was at night. It was dark, but I could see the moon for like the first time in decades, a couple of decades. I could see the moon. So I just stood by that window and I probably stared at the moon for about an hour or so, just staring at it, because it was amazing. It was amazing to see that moon. And I'm sorry.
No. Take your time.
It was sunny. And I was led out to the yard. and the buildings were all white. And that sun was reflecting off the building, and I couldn't see. It was like people in the snow, they wear sun protectors so that they can see. And the buildings had that effect. The white buildings had that effect. And I was blinded for like about a minute. I couldn't see. And then as my eyes were adjusting to the light, I could see I was on the track of the yard, and I could see the grass alongside the track.
That's amazing. You know,
So
it's it's interesting because you take so much for granted, you know. I mean, I'm sitting here watching the trees blow through my office window, but
that's amazing to see.
yeah,
There's so much beauty in that.
yeah.
What I did when I saw the grass, I went off to the side and I cut a blade of grass just to feel it between my fingers, just to touch nature. After 20 years of just touching steel and concrete, I was able to touch something from nature, and it felt amazing. Yeah, and people take so much for granted, you know.
Yeah. And you're right. You know, I hike with my kids as much as I can because there's something about just being out, and I try not to take it for granted. But then, like, listening to your story, I realized that just you know, how important it is to just stop and take the time and enjoy the little things, because that's what makes life beautiful. You know, that's what makes life beautiful.
Yeah,
Even a blade of
the
grass.
simple things, the most simple things, you know, you start appreciating after losing your freedom that way and being confined in such manner. It puts a lot of things into perspective.
Yeah.
For me, the beauty of nature that I couldn't see for 20 years, it was like, wow, amazing. And I became like, when I got a cell phone, you know, when I came home and I had a cell phone, I would be out taking pictures of the moon, take pictures of the trees. I was just taking pictures of everything.
Yeah.
Like I don't want this ever to be taken from me again. Even if I thought I'm going to preserve it here on this cell phone, you know, just in case, you know. Yeah.
I totally get that though. That's why I started social media. I had an accident that it messed with my memory. And it wasn't completely gone, but I had enough holes in my memory that I started just saving little snippets every single day. And it was silly things. Like, I'd be at a creek and I'd see just the way the water was swirling, and I'd like, this is amazing. I just want to capture this moment. And
Yes.
it's weird how it's not until things are taken away from you that you start to realize every single thing is so beautiful and so important. And you
Yeah.
know,
It goes to the old saying, you know, you never know what you have until you lose it, you know.
yeah, exactly. Wow. Thank you for sharing that, because that is such a beautiful reminder. And it's so easy. I mean, like, you know, coming into this talk today, my kids were assholes today. They were assholes. And I was so frustrated with them. And I was working really hard to keep my frustration out, but I was like, they've, and this really reminded me that, you know what, none of that matters. End of the day, I get to hug them. I get to take hikes with them. I get to go outside with them. Like, none of that matters. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I have a lot of regrets in life, but I'm not bitter. I hold no resentments. And even though I spent all those years in solitary confinement, you know what? I made productive use of my time in there. I kept myself busy.
Yeah.
Every day I kept myself busy, whether I was reading, whether I was writing, whether I was drawing, because I learned how to draw in there. Well, I was playing chess. We played chess, marking the chess. We would make makeshift chess boards with a blank sheet of paper. And so let's say my neighbor, he makes his chessboard also, and we number the squares, 1 through 64. And so he has his on his side, I have my pieces on my side, and we call the numbers, and that's how we played chess. I educated myself in there. There were no education programs in there at all to participate in, so you had to take the initiative on your own, whether it's through correspondence. If you find an organization, I mean, the organizations back in the 90s that back in the 90s, late 80s and 90s, when I started doing my time, organizations that provided educational programs or self-help programs were very scarce, even more so in solitary confinement. So my sister, I have one of my sisters would purchase books for me, and I was interested more in educational books more so than fictional books. And so, during my time in the security housing unit, I used to get like 3 visits a year from my family, because Crescent City is like almost 800 miles from Los Angeles. So my family would drive up 12 hours one way and then 12 hours back home, just to see me for an hour and a half behind a glass window and a telephone. And I have a large family, brothers and sisters that were graduating from high school, going on to college. So they would get their diplomas, they would get their degrees. And I noticed during my visits, they would bring me pictures and place them up against the window so that I could see pictures of the family, how it was growing. I started getting nephews and nieces. And a lot of these pictures were taken in my mom's living room. And then I noticed that in my mom's living room, she was starting to frame these certificates, diplomas, degrees, accolades from my siblings. And she didn't have one of me. But I was still educating myself. And I would talk to my mom about that. I would tell my mom, I wish that I could give you a certificate of some sort, a diploma or something, so you could put on your wall. And she would tell me in Spanish, because she didn't know English. She couldn't speak English, but she would tell me, algún día, hijo. Someday, son. Ten years after I was there, the education department announced that they were going to start letting us take the GED. Mind you, when I came in at 17, they conducted a taped test to assess my educational level, academic level. At 17 years old, I was fifth grade reading level. You know, I was a high school dropout.
Yeah.
When they allowed us to take the GED 10 years out after I was in the SHU, I was 30 years old already. And had a lot of self-education under my belt. So I submitted a request to the education coordinator to be allowed to take the test. And he came to my cell and he says, I have to give you a pretest first to see if we can give you the test, because if you fail the pretest, it would be a waste of time and money. I said, I understand. So he gave me the test. And he came back 30 minutes later after he took the pretest, and he says, you passed with flying colors. I'm gonna put you on the. A year before I took that pretest, you know, there were rumors that they were gonna start allowing us to take the GED soon. So I wanted to prepare myself for that. So from the prison's library, I checked out a 500-page book. It's called a GED pretest book. And it took me about a whole year to go from cover to cover. And then the math section, I did it twice because I learned that was my weak suit. So back to where I ended up passing the pretest, and a month later, two individuals and myself were taken to the visiting area where the real test was going to be conducted. So I was one of the first. It was three of us. We were the first ones to take the GED out of about 1,500 there in the SHU. So it was like a 2-3 day process because there was 5 subjects. I didn't know whether I passed. A month later, I'm in my cell and I get a manila envelope through the mail, and it's addressed from Sacramento. I'm like, oh, what is this? I opened it and pulled out its contents, and lo and behold, it was my GED diploma.
That's awesome.
I sat down. I probably stared at it for an hour, like reading everything, fine print and everything. I even turned the back of it to see if there was any writing in the back. But my name was in the largest print. And the first thing that came to my mind was my mom's wall.
Awesome. That's so awesome.
And that same day, I mailed it out home. The thing about my family is that when they would come visit me, they would give me at least 2 weeks advance notice. We're gonna go visit you on this day, be ready. I ended up getting a visit that Saturday after I mailed it home Monday, and I didn't know who it was because I didn't get an advance notice from my family. So I went out there and it was them. It was my mom, my dad, and my sister who had been buying me all these educational books. And I noticed they had an envelope, and they took out pictures. They started putting them against the window. And it was my mom's wall. She had my diploma framed.
Oh, that's just amazing. That's so awesome.
it was just to see my parents' face filled with pride and joy. My sister too. It was like one of the greatest feelings that
Yeah.
I could ever have because I made them proud.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. That's
Um,
amazing.
you know, 10 years after that, I was eventually released to the general population. And I was given the opportunity to enroll in college.
Oh, wow.
I enrolled in college in 2014. And these classes that I'm taking, social and behavioral sciences, a lot of science classes, English, writing, math, all this stuff. My grades were coming back as semester after semester, and I'm getting A's. I'm getting like straight A's, and my GPA is 4.0, and I'm like, I can't, like, this can't be possible, what is this, like, I knew these courses that I was, the material, I knew this stuff. I learned this stuff through books that I was reading in the shoe. And I was like, wow. I was telling myself, like, college is easy. I ended up earning four college degrees, and I graduated with a 3.7 GPA.
That's amazing.
Their associate's degrees. I still plan to return for a bachelor's and eventually a master's, but it's just, applying myself, and really, I came to enjoy education. To me, it was entertaining to me to learn how the world works, from a social perspective, from a science perspective. Like, all that was very interesting to me, and it was entertaining to me. And that's how I ended up doing so well in college. I learned about the law as well, because at one point while I was in the security housing unit, after my direct appeal was exhausted, I had to I had to learn how to file my own briefs, and some knowledge on filing briefs pertaining to my case. And recently, this past January, I graduated from Loyola Law School's Independent Forensic Gang Expert College. So right now I'm a certified gang expert, and this work entails defense attorneys contract me to represent their clients who are facing jail time. I can, if they're facing a gang enhancement, I can come in and interview with their client, read probation reports or court transcripts, and give an assessment as to the client's gang status, whether the client is really gang entrenched for the purposes of being given a gang enhancement or mitigating circumstances. So that's I have also that work as aside from credible messenger with ARC.
That's amazing. Like, yeah, it's amazing because you look at your experiences and you have such a unique set of experiences, and you've looked for, how do I take those and use them to the best of their ability? And that's really smart.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that, because the last 5 years I spent in prison, I was my job in prison was a teacher's assistant.
Oh,
And yeah, so that job, oftentimes, if not most of the time, when I was in the class, in the classroom, I was up on the whiteboard instructing.
Wow.
And so, many years in security housing unit where my communication was limited because there was nobody to talk to. I have a natural fear of speaking in public. So I had to muster a lot of courage when I got that job as a teacher's assistant to get up in front of the classroom and in front of that whiteboard and instruct class, for 6 hours throughout the day, So that was a huge learning experience there. And then when I was taking self-help classes, I had to learn to facilitate, not just participate, but I eventually became a facilitator and I was speaking in front of the class. So when ARC called upon me for a job, I had already had experience in facilitating these classes. Yeah, I can do it. And it was like a perfect match, a perfect fit for me to be here with land a position with ARC.
I find that life is like that. It's kind of interesting how when you're moving towards whatever it is that's your niche that you're supposed to fill, things just fall into place. It's crazy how it happens. But
Yes,
time and
yeah.
again,
Mhm.
I find that when I'm working towards something and it's the right move for me, pieces just click into place. And if you can just let go of the process and have faith that things are going to fall into place, it's amazing what happens.
You know what? I'm a wholehearted believer that during the graduation ceremony of the Forensic Gang Expert College, I gave a speech that a lot of it had what I just shared with you. My mom passed away in December 2022. After I was out here with her 3 years, and she, I would come home from the office, from the ARC office, because my mom lives like 4 miles from here, and I would come home in my suit, my tie, and my briefcase, and my mom would be waiting for me at the door because I'll call her, mom, I'm on my way, and she'll have dinner prepared for me, and she would meet me at the door, and she would want to take my briefcase from me, and then she'll adjust my tie, and her face just lit up when she saw me because she was so proud, that I'm thriving out here. I'm just not home free. I'm thriving. And at my graduation ceremony this past January, we took a lot of pictures. My sister posted some of those pictures, and she quoted my mom as saying, everything's falling into place for my son. Like everything he proposes to do, like it materializes. And that's just what you said right now. Like everything starts to fall into place, and it just doesn't happen out of anywhere. You prepare, you plant seeds, you sow seeds, and they come into fruition.
Yes. I love that. Is there anything else that you want to share with us or leave with us?
Set goals and follow through with them, because much of my story involves with setting goals. Because if you just have dreams, that's all they are, is dreams. Dreams have to be followed through with goals in order to materialize those dreams.
I love that. That was great. I love that one. And if anyone has questions, where should they go to get more information about you guys?
ARC, the website, Anti-Recidivism Coalition, you can find it on our website.
And I'll put a link up on the show notes. Well, thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
I
Thank you very much.
appreciate this.
Absolutely. Anytime,
Yeah,
anytime.
this was a beautiful, like, you've got the most beautiful story. I hope that you are documenting it or writing it. I mean, obviously you're using it to pay forward and help kids, but like, this is an amazing story.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm happy to share it.
I appreciate, like, and I know that your story is going to make major change in the world. And so I appreciate this little chunk of time, but really I appreciate you making
Thank
the
you.
commitment to doing something bigger. And this was wonderful. So have a wonderful rest of your day, and
Thank you.
you're welcome.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye.